Hello and welcome to Pushing Back, Ukraine Daily Brief. As the war enters its 1154th day, these are the main developments from the past 24 hours. The update from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Russia has lost approximately 944,270 troops in Ukraine since the beginning of the war. The number includes 1,210 casualties over the past day. According to the released Ukrainian figures, Russia lost 8 tanks, 11 armored combat vehicles, 85 artillery systems, 1 multiple launch rocket system, 1 air defense system, 138 drones, 163 vehicles and 1 piece of special equipment. In the last 24 hours the Russians launched 124 combat clashes and carried out 76 airstrikes including 74 guided bombs on the territory of Ukraine. They also used 1128 kamikaze drones and carried out around 4,649 attacks on the positions of Ukrainian troops and settlements using various types of weapons. In its latest intelligence update on the Ukraine conflict, the Institute for the Study of War reports. The Financial Times reported that Russian President Vladimir Putin is willing to end the war in Ukraine on the current front lines. Kremlin officials, including Putin, have repeatedly and explicitly emphasized that Russia maintains its territorial demands over all of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson oblasts, however, while also publicly signaling that Russia has greater territorial ambitions in Ukraine beyond these 4 oblasts. The Moscow Times reported that the Kremlin is attempting to use economic incentives to sway US-Russian talks about the war in Ukraine, as the Kremlin is not sincerely interested in US President Donald Trump's efforts to end the war. ISW cannot independently verify Kremlin sources' statements, but recent Kremlin behavior is consistent with the Moscow Times insider reporting. Any potential future Russian agreement to freeze the front short of Russia's full control of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson oblasts does not preclude future Russian aggression to achieve Russia's more extensive territorial demands, especially if the agreement stipulates a moratorium on Ukraine receiving Western military aid. Kremlin officials continued efforts on April 22 to blame Ukraine for the lack of progress towards Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's proposed temporary ceasefire on strikes against civilian infrastructure. The Kremlin continues to reject Trump's stated goal of achieving a ceasefire in Ukraine before a full peace settlement to end the war, in contrast to Ukraine's continued support for a general ceasefire. Russian forces continue to innovate their long-range drone strike tactics in order to offset the effectiveness of Ukrainian mobile defense units. Russia is reportedly recruiting North Korean citizens to compensate for labor shortages in Russia, indicating that Russian-North Korean cooperation continues to deepen. Russian forces recently advanced in Kursk Oblast and near Toretsk. In its latest intelligence update on Russian force generation and technological adaptations, the Institute for the Study of War reports. The Kremlin appears to be increasingly concerned with the Russian military's ability to retain forces in the event of demobilization following a ceasefire or a negotiated peace. Russian mill bloggers expressed doubts that the Russian MOD will be able to retain the current size of the Russian military if the Russian MOD does not promise, and honor, increased financial benefits. The Kremlin and some Russian federal subjects are continuing to increase financial incentives and expand eligibility requirements for contract military service. Some Russian federal subjects are failing to meet the Kremlin's recruitment targets as the Russian volunteer recruitment system continues to suffer from high recruitment costs and other inefficiencies. Some Russian federal subjects may be failing to meet recruitment targets because they are unable to compete with financial incentives offered in other federal subjects. Putin signed a decree on April 21 exempting select volunteers who fought in Ukraine in volunteer units or Kremlin proxy forces from being conscripted into the Russian military, likely as part of the Kremlin's effort to centralize control over informal volunteer units. The Kremlin is continuing to expand the Time of Heroes Higher School of Public Administration program across occupied Ukraine, likely in an effort to raise a new class of loyal occupation officials. Russian mill bloggers criticized Russian state media after it published a video of Russian long-range drone operators conducting a drone strike from a high-rise in Moscow City. Russia reportedly developed a new version of the Komet navigation chip, enhancing the resistance of Russian satellite navigation signals against Ukrainian electronic warfare. On April 16, Putin awarded the honorific Guards titles to 4 Russian motorized rifle regiments, an aviation regiment, and an army corps that have fought in Donetsk and Kherson oblasts. In a high-level meeting in London, Ukrainian officials pressed U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg for support in securing an immediate, full, and unconditional ceasefire as a first step toward peace. Kiev reaffirmed its unwavering stance on sovereignty and territorial integrity, while both sides agreed to continue regular dialogue. Thanks for following today's updates. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. We'll return tomorrow with the latest news on the ongoing conflict.